Coming up on tonight's UAP News Show.
Danny says there's DNA.
Lue Elizondo's book release is a hoax.
Official UAP records posted to the National Archives.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a UAP.
Or is it another balloon?
Yeah.
And a spacecraft lands on the moon in preparation for NASA's Artemis mission. Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Allie, and we're back at it again for another episode of UAP Society's weekly UAP and UFO news show. We've combed through this past week's most exciting, intriguing, and informative happenings, and I'm stoked to get started. So without further ado, Justin, say hey.
Greetings, cosmic enthusiasts. It's Justin here, and welcome to the UAP Society's UAP UFO news show. Your ticket to an interstellar adventure like no other. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, get ready for a cosmic roller coaster ride through the latest updates from the far reaches of the galaxy.
You're in for a treat as we bring you the latest and greatest UAP and UFO news. So find your seats, strap in, and get ready to go on a galactic ride with us.
Danny says there's DNA. So on Monday, February 19th, Skyfire News tweeted, Danny Sheehan claims the Senate Intelligence Committee has been shown DNA tests that prove the government is in possession of non-human extraterrestrial bodies. This tweet was referring to Sheehan's recent appearance on the Danny Jones YouTube show. Let's take a peek at that now.
Okay.
You know, this is an extraordinary event. I mean, when you have, and everybody knows now about Colonel Grush, you know, testifying in the House Oversight Committee under oath that we are in possession of a non-human extraterrestrial spacecraft. You know, and the bodies that are non-human. The DNA tests have shown that they're non-human. You know, that's a big story.
The DNA tests have shown, but have we seen any DNA tests?
They've got them. The Senate Intelligence Committee's got it.
Done, fucking done. So DNA tests. I mean, so many questions.
Yeah, what's coming to my mind is, okay, so whatever these beings are have DNA.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, like that's, yeah, but there's so many other, okay, well, if there is life throughout the whole universe, right? You know, who's to say that they have DNA? You know, there's probably a different type, there's all kinds of different forms of life. You know, you don't have to have DNA. You know, they might not be carbon based, right? They might have some other. They
may have like a quadruple helix structure
who knows?
Or something. But okay, so my mind goes to, go ahead, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Okay, so to me that says that, okay, if you take this information with everything that David Grush has been saying about the beings being interdimensional, you know, what if they are future human, like Mike Masters has been saying, you know, future human coming back in through time somehow with some advanced technology.
Okay.
You know, I mean, they would be descendants of ours, right? Or they would be a carbon-based life form. They would have DNA.
Okay.
You know, so
valid points.
I don't know, the fact that he's coming out and saying that the Senate Intelligence Committee has seen, you know, DNA reports stating that these are non-humans, then I mean that's pretty big to me. That's telling.
And what comes to my mind with that is that if they're determining that these DNA samples are not of human origin, what origin are they of, and how many different varieties are we looking at? Like, I'm sure it's not just one other species. There's got to be like a handful, if not dozens or hundreds or thousands. What do we know? You know what I mean? So it's like, who are these creatures? What is their relationship to us? Where are these bodies being kept? Are they still alive? If they're not, how long were they alive? You know, like just so many questions.
So many questions. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know down in the comments, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think they're future human? Do you think that they're completely something else? You know, let us know.
Yep, drop a comment down below. So late in the week, website peters.co.uk made a listing for a 320-page book called Disclosure, supposedly written by Lue Elizondo, that cost a little bit less than $19 and with a publication date of November 6th, 2024. The summary from that website reads, as a civilian with high-level national security clearance, Elizondo is widely viewed as the world's most credible authority on UAP and UFOs. This memoir reveals groundbreaking, even shocking details of what Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, learned, and the profound implications, not just for humanity, but for everything we think we know about our lonely place in the universe. So that sounds good, right?
Yeah.
Problem is, none of that information is accurate.
Nope.
During a live episode of Disclosure Tonight on the Thomas Fessler YouTube channel, they were talking about this and covering this story, and Lue himself called in to the host, Thomas, and set the record straight. So let's check that out now.
Yeah.
I had a phone call come in, yes, from Lue to go ahead and say the date is the title is not right, the number of pages is not right, the release date is not right.
And he also said that he's not getting the manuscript back, so it hasn't been approved.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of any manuscript as well.
Right. That makes perfect sense. So this information and this story that broke is not accurate, to say the least.
Yeah, to say the least. Unfortunately, It looks like the date is not exactly correct.
So not accurate on like literally all accounts. I mean, the summary may sound good. The author, Lue Elizondo, was correct, but like everything else was a bunch of bupkis.
Yeah. I mean, that's the summary makes sense to me. You know, it seems very plausible that it could be from his book, right?
Right.
But, you know, according to Lue, none of it's right. So
yeah. And we just talked about this book last week. We were mentioned like, when is it coming out? Did it clear Dobster? Whatever.
Yeah.
And apparently we don't know when it's coming out still, because somebody, and by the way, who is this somebody? Like, where did this leak come from? Who decided that they were going to take it upon themselves to create you know, the amount of pages that the book is, when the publication date is going to be, what the name of it is going to be? Like, who took it upon themselves to come up with all this and then post it on the internet? Giving people something to talk about, you know, like, shame on you.
Yeah. Let us know down in the comments if you know how the leak happened or any more information that we have not said here.
Yeah. If you got any good speculations about who started it, where, when, and why, and how, let us know.
Yep. So official UAP records were posted to the National Archives. On Tuesday, the 20th, user Curious Explorer tweeted, and this is in quotes, "As was due today, under the 2024 NDAA, the National Archives posted the official UAP records collection. It can be found here, and the website is archives.gov/research/topics/UAPs.
Good job.
What was due today was taking their existing documents and organizing them in one place for researchers interested in the UAP topic to find. This is just a starting point. From now through the rest of the year, culminating in an October deadline, the U.S. government will review all of its UAP documents. Anything over 25 years will be required to be released unless the president expressly postpones that release. Anything under 25 years can be postponed essentially at the discretion of the original classifying authority. While we shouldn't be naive that this won't force everything out into the open, we also should acknowledge that some excellent information will likely come of it, even if it comes in the form of them telling us all the documents they need to keep secret. We should all thank Senator Schumer and Senator Rounds behind the scenes for championing this legislation, even if they and we didn't get all the parts we wanted. Also, thank you to U.S. National Archives for taking their legal deadline seriously, unlike DoD Arrow.
I love that little bit of shade at the end. Yeah, I was going to say, I love how they just colored in the ending with the shade.
Yeah.
All right, so the link attached to that tweet takes you to the National Archives website to a page that reads, records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, at the National Archives. The National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA, N-A-R-A, has established an unidentified anomalous phenomena records collection per sections 1841 through 1843 of the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, which is Public Law 118 through 31. Please explore the links below to find out more about the records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena, or unidentified flying objects, UAPs or UFOs, in NARA's holdings. All links to items in the National Archives catalog are downloadable and can be republished with attribution to the National Archives and Records Administration. So on the website, that front page, there are 4 different sections of UAP-related records with like little drop-down menus that include still pictures and photographs. That's the first one. Moving images and sound, textual records and microfilm, and National Archive blog posts. So that link to the website, along with all other sources that are featured in this show, can be found in the description box below. So make sure to check that out.
And in this clip, from News Nation, we hear host Chris Cuomo speak to Ross Coulthart and Jeremy Corbell about this issue. And let's watch that now.
Yep.
So after News Nation interviewed UFO whistleblower David Grush, Congress took immediate action-ish, right? They did pass legislation requiring the government to tell the public what it knows about UFOs, but then you get that little tricky piece in there about what's classified. So now the federal government has begun collecting all of its UFO documents to be made public. Really? Let's ask News Nation special correspondent Ross Coulthart and investigative journalist, co-host of the Weaponized podcast, Jeremy Corbell. It's good to have you both, brothers. Thank you for being here. Ross, I am skeptical. What is the reason to believe that this is good news in terms of transparency?
Firstly, g'day, Chris. It's good news because this law change that came in December, it requires that all UAP records be passed across from every single government department. They're now legally required to hand over any records they've got that relate to unidentified anomalous phenomena and to hand them to the independent body, your National Archives, the American National Archives. And that's very, very important because the National Archives will make a decision, not those government departments, about what should remain classified. And more importantly, this new legislation also says that any records that were created 25 years ago or more, so let's say before 1999, there will be a presumption in many ways of release, unless there's a very, very good national security reason that they not be released. And so that could potentially mean, for example, that we might see declassification of records that I know the Air Force is still holding on to about events that took place in the 1940s and 50s, like Roswell and the Aztec incident. And so we might see a possibility where they're forced by the National Archives to reveal documents that they've been sitting on for decades.
So I hear you. I want to believe. But as I pivot to Jeremy, when I hear National Archives, I hear another opportunity to cover things up with another mechanism. Do you feel the flavor of that skepticism?
I do. Look, I am optimistic, and like Ross, we want the same thing. We are both optimistic, but more important than being optimistic, we are fighting to make sure that we keep an eye on everything that's going on. But the reality is that classified UAP information, they're annexed, they're put to the side. The National Archives has almost a 0% chance of getting them and reviewing them properly because of national security. But if people like Ross and me, if we're on it and we keep our eye on them, we can force the issue. I'll give you an example, Chris. George Knapp and I tried. We notified Congress and the American public. We brought in hand to those hearings DIA documents. We brought them in our hands, and we tried to submit them onto the congressional record. And that didn't happen. But we did try. And we did use in our official statements in Congress, when we put them in, we did tell them, we exposed a massive and extensive UAP archive that the DIA has in their possession. And the DIA is currently pretending not to have it. I have seen these documents. I have personally seen them. They are not classified. Our Congress needs to look at what George Knapp and I submitted. They saw the physical documents when we brought some of them in, but now they are denying having them, the DIA. It's hard to deny something I've seen with my own eyes.
You know, Ross, just last quick thing. You know, even what we see with the spy balloons, right? Now they're monitoring another one. Last year, it led to fighter jets shooting down several unidentified objects over the U.S. and Canada. No word on what they were. You know, when you combine the lack of advantage of one party over the other on this issue and just general apathy of things that don't benefit them directly, you got a lot of inertia working against you on this issue. What do you think breaks through it, Ross?
Well, I'm here in Washington, Chris, because I'm trying to find out what's really going on. Because as you say, there's not a lot happening publicly. But I've been meeting people on the Hill, and I've been talking to people in intelligence and defense. And I can tell you there is a bipartisan push still happening in Congress for the release of information. Politicians can smell a vote when they see one. and I can tell you they can see there is electorate interest, voter interest in getting this stuff out there. I am besieged with people giving me information. And so I can tell you that there have been secret meetings in Congress, secret briefings in Congress, and there is a new initiative underway by a group called the New Paradigm Institute to basically try to get new legislation to force greater disclosure.
Look, let's hope it happens, Ross. Jeremy, we're all on the same page with this about transparency, but I got to know, Jeremy, what's in the safe? What's in the safe,
What's
brother?
safe, Chris?
Over your right shoulder.
What's safe?
What's in the safe? Over your shoulder.
I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, Ross.
Big ass safe right over your shoulder.
I'm so grateful. Listen, Chris, Ross, we can do this together. Every millimeter we can fight for. To have eyes on right now is such an important time. Thank you so much for bringing us all together. I really respect what you guys do. It's time to fire, man. It's time to hunt.
Well, we'll stay on it. Ross Coulthard, thank you very much. Jeremy Corbell, I think you got the rest of my hairline in that safe. Please send it back to me. We'll be continuing this conversation, and thank you for pushing for transparency.
All right. So lots of things were said in there.
Yep.
I have a couple of thoughts, but I want to see where you want to start with yours, because I have some points I want to make, but I want to see what you say first.
So am I still disappointed, you know, that the NDAA got gutted, you know, at the end of last year? Yeah, absolutely. You know,
Yep.
you know, I mean, we could have had so much more, but the mics, you know, literally.
Mike, and Mike.
Yeah, they, man.
Mike cubed, jacked that all up.
They did. Wow. You know, we lost the subpoena power. We lost the presidentially appointed review board, you know.
Yeah.
Those are the two big things for me that I was disappointed about. But I'm still happy that we got something, you know. This isn't what everybody wanted at the end of last year, but this is still something.
It's what we're left with.
Still another mechanism for them to hide, you know, more stuff, possibly. You know, but I don't know. I remain hopeful, you know, that we can get a little more information out of these documents.
Yeah, and I'm excited the fact that they're starting with the oldies but the goodies, because like if they come forward and release a bunch of Roswell stuff and, you know, let us know that that was a different scenario based off of what was portrayed in the media, that's going to start a really big unraveling. It's like when you got a little string loose on your sleeve, you know what I mean? And you pull it and all of a sudden you got a big old rip. I'm hoping that that's what happens with this situation. Now, my biggest concern, to be honest, is the whole like fact that they could still veto certain records based off of national security, because in my mind, like trying to guess what they're going to do, they're going to be like, oh, well, all of this is national security. Ha ha, you don't get nothing. But I'm hoping that we do get something. I mean, that's what the tweet that we read said. Even if we don't get certain documents, that's telling in itself also, because it's like, well, what's behind the curtain? You know,
or if they come forward and say that, you know, like let's say a 70% worth of documents were destroyed, you know, from way back when till now.
Ooh,
you know,
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, which that's exactly what happened. I believe the Air Force came out and said over 70% of the documents related to Roswell have been destroyed.
Dang.
Yeah, so that's,
Okay, well, we shall see. We shall
sucks.
see. We shall see. The process has started. The website is there. There are certain things already on it. The link to that website is going to be in the description box below. So make sure to check it out. Let us know what you think of what's there and what's to come from this whole scenario. Two other points I would like to make before we dismiss this story or move on to the next one. One of them being that in that video, Ross Coulthard mentioned the New Paradigm Institute, which, if you don't know, that's Danny Sheehan's project, who we mentioned in the first story. And last year, at the end of last year, we covered that website, and there was the call to have a shift storm, which was talking about sending all these senators and these congresspeople letters and emails and letting them know, hey, look, this is important to us, blah, blah, blah. We're going to support you supporting this topic. And now here we are, you know, it's basically like coming into play because lo and behold, we're in an election year. And like Ross said, certain topics get certain amount of votes. So it's like people are probably dipping their toes in this, knowing that it could be like a leverage thing for them to get where they want to go.
Yeah, you know, this is an important topic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody in our community for sure. You know, and
a lot of people paying attention to it this time around.
Yeah, there is. Yep.
A lot of people talking about it. And another thing in that video that Chris mentioned is that the government is tracking another spy balloon. So what was he talking about? Let's roll into the next story and find out. So it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a UAP. According to this tweet from CBS News, quote, developing. The U.S. is tracking a high-altitude balloon flying over the western part of the country, U.S. officials told CBS News, end quote. And then the next day, they followed up with another tweet that says, quote, the small high-altitude hobbyist balloon being tracked by the U.S. has left American airspace, the North American Aerospace Defense Command told CBS News on Saturday afternoon, end quote. So let's take a look at their video coverage on this story next.
The United States is tracking a high-altitude balloon flying over the western part of the country. The balloon was first detected over Utah and is not considered a threat to national security, but its origin and purpose are still unknown. For more, our national security correspondent David Martin joins us from the Pentagon. So, David, what do we know so far?
The balloon is traveling at about 60 miles an hour from west to east, and it's essentially being blown by the winds at an altitude of about 43 to 45,000 feet, which the FAA says is high enough so as not to pose a hazard to commercial aviation. It's described as a small mylar balloon, about 50 feet tall, with a 2-foot square box hanging underneath it. By comparison, that Chinese spy balloon, which flew across the United States almost exactly 1 year ago, was 200 feet tall and carried a payload of intelligence sensors and solar panels that were the size of 2 freight cars. So there's a considerable difference between these two balloons. The U.S. military, of course, shot down the Chinese balloon once it reached the Atlantic Ocean. This balloon is still being blown across the U.S., and NORAD says it will continue to monitor it to make sure that it does not pose a hazard to commercial aviation.
All right, David Martin at the Pentagon for us. David, thank you.
All right, so the thing that sticks out to me the most about this situation is that it's giving me like deja vu from like a year ago. So like last year, February 4th, 2023 is when we had that Chinese spy balloon. And now here we are, February 26th, 2024, and we're dealing with another one. Now, obviously, they're 2 different sizes, 2 different altitudes. It sounds like there's 2 different levels of responses to them because last year's they shot down, whereas this year's they're just kind of watching it float around, seeing where it goes. So they said that it's out of the United States airspace, so I guess they're not even concerned about it anymore. And I'm curious to see what happens with this one. If something's happened since I put the story together, I'm unaware. So maybe they already shot it down. I have no idea.
Yeah. They came back and said that it was a small hobbyist balloon, right? So that's making me think of, the balloon that the UAP Society launched, from Verdal, Utah, a couple years ago. That was the same thing. It was a small hobbyist, helium balloon.
But ours went to space.
Yeah, ours went a lot higher, right?
Ours went to
They're
space.
saying this one was, was floating around at what, like 40-something thousand feet? I mean,
yeah, not even enough.
That's not really even that high. It's barely above the altitude that commercial airplanes fly. I mean, commercial airplanes could get up to, 41 or 42,000 feet. They would have to be empty, but typically business jets or military aircraft fly, around 40-something thousand feet, they or higher, the military ones.
Okay.
But yeah, business jets can definitely, some of them can fly up to, 45,000 feet.
Okay.
And I think even some G5s can fly higher. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, so I guess it didn't pose a risk to commercial aviation, so they weren't really that concerned with it,
But like, whose is it? Where'd this thing come from?
Yeah,
is anybody going to claim this balloon?
I think the Air Force probably knows because they said it was a small hobbyist balloon.
Okay, but
so they at least were able to identify it, and it's not really a threat. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, but
figured it was worth mentioning since Chris Cuomo mentioned it and people are talking about it, and it's like a year anniversary recurring theme apparently.
Right. And that Alaskan, quote unquote Alaskan object that they shot down, that's the interesting one for me.
And we just talked about that last show where we gave the update that Ross Coulthard is just in. I got a text that they actually did shoot it down. U.S. military was involved. So we just covered that last show. So if you haven't seen that update, make sure to go and watch that show after this one's over.
Yeah.
Make sure to stay till the end.
Okay. A spacecraft lands on the moon in preparation for NASA's Artemis mission. On Friday, NASA announced that, for the first time since the Apollo era, new NASA science instruments and tech demonstrations are operating on the moon after Intuitive Machines' Odysseus lander arrived on the lunar surface. The IM-1 mission team expects to receive images in the coming days. And by the time you're watching this, I believe we already have seen those images.
Okay. Odysseus touched down near the south pole of the moon on Thursday and was carrying advanced instruments for scientific research and technology tests crucial for lunar exploration longevity. The Texas-based company responsible for building and flying spacecraft Odysseus is Intuitive Machines. That's the name of the company. This is the first U.S. landing on the lunar surface in more than half a century, and the first that was ever accomplished entirely by a private company or sector. NASA's Artemis mission aims to study the moon's resources and improve precise landing techniques vital for future human-manned missions. But speaking of precise landings, they didn't exactly do that, because this spacecraft did not land upright. In fact, she tipped over to the side. She laying on her side. She taking a little nap. So to learn more about this, let's watch the clip from Canadian CBC News.
A U.S. spacecraft is on the moon for the first time in 50 years. Officials confirming Odysseus touched down near the South Pole, though not completely upright. The spacecraft reported to have caught a foot in the surface and tipped over on its side. The company behind the launch saying most of the scientific instruments it's carrying are still in a position to work. And for more on this, we're joined by the one and only Bob McDonald. He's CBC's national science commentator, host of CBC's Quirks and Quarks. Great to see you, Bob. You know, I imagine you watching this, holding your breath, and then hearing that it actually touched down, breathing a sigh of relief, but now hearing that it's on its side. What do you think about this landing? What are you worried about?
Well, and it was an interesting experience because as it was coming down, I thought, wow, everything's working just fine. Then all of a sudden they lost contact with it. And I went, uh-oh, it's always that last meter that gets you. You know, you can get all the way to the moon, and then at the very last second, you can trip and fall over. And this had happened to a Japanese robot that tried to land just recently. It did the same thing. It tripped and it ended up upside down. So that was what was going through my mind. But eventually, you know, they did reestablish contact with it. So it wasn't a perfect landing, but at least they're on the surface.
Yeah, and there are some instruments, and as we say there, that, you know, the instruments we're hearing, most of them are still able to carry on the work that they were sent there to do. I think there was some lasers or something like that. Can you explain to us what's on this lander, and you know what it was there for, and how likely it is that it's still working?
Well, they know it is still working. There's about 12 different instruments that are on there. And the one that I find really interesting is a Canadian experiment. Most people don't realize that Canada is part of this project. We were involved in the navigation on how to find the landing site and come down. And there's a camera on it. There's a little camera that is not going to actually look at the moon. It's supposed to look up and take pictures of the Milky Way and astronomical objects and even look back at the Earth and then send those pictures back to the Earth to see if it would be possible to put a telescope at the south pole of the moon. But now that this thing is lying on its side, I don't know which way that camera is pointing and whether or not they'll be able to do that. But I hope that that works. The point is, Canada's part of it, just as we always have been. We don't build big rockets, we don't make a lot of noise, but we do build precision instruments, and we were part of this team as well.
And, you know, where this landed as well, I know this was a big part of how significant this is. What is it that you're hoping that science will be able to glean from this operation, and specifically where this lander touched down?
Yeah, it landed very close to the south pole of the moon, and that is a special target of future missions, including some of the human missions to the moon, because there are places at the bottoms of craters that never see the sun. At the South Pole, the sun is very, very low on the horizon. So if you have a bowl, the sunlight doesn't get into it. And they're permanently shaded. They're very, very cold. And it's believed that there's ice there. Now, on the moon, ice is a valuable, valuable resource because it can provide water for people who are there, but it can also provide rocket fuel because water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. And when you separate that out, that's rocket fuel. So ice is going to be like gold. People are going to be mining it, which raises some interesting questions. Supposedly nobody owns the moon, but are we going to have mineral right issues there in the future? But that's why they're going to the South Pole, to find out how much ice is there and how it can be used.
And I'm sure Jeremy Hansen watching this as well very carefully, as you have been. Bob McDonald, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for explaining this for us today.
Thank you, Linda. It's always my pleasure.
Yeah, all right. So we have two spacecraft that are both landed within the last month.
Yep. Japan just a couple weeks ago.
that both have tipped on their side.
Same thing. See, I want to know like who's building these things, right? And like if you're so
Engineers.
sophisticated that like you can get it from the Earth to the moon, why wouldn't you install some sort of like self-correcting thing, like in the event that it does tip over, like why can't it stick a little arm out and like bloop, pop itself back up?
Hey, maybe you should message the engineers that.
Maybe I should be an engineer. But I'm just saying, like if you could get something from the Earth to the moon, why can't you allow it to self-correct its positioning, you know?
Yeah.
All right, anyways, I'll stop.
I don't know. I mean, you can't make this up.
I
mean,
know.
it's comical, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but so they were all excited about that little camera that's supposed to pop out and take all these pictures, right? But what if it's like laying on that camera? What's it gonna do? Take a picture of the moon dust? I mean, okay, cool. Let's use some moon dust.
Yeah.
I don't know. I shouldn't be so negative. I'm making jokes, but I shouldn't be.
you know, hopefully they'll get some good data out of this mission.
Yes.
You know, and that they'll learn some things and apply that to the next one, right?
Yes, exactly. And you know, I think it's cool that the United States, the Texas-based company, teamed up with Canada, and they kind of worked on this together. So that's cool. I always love to see a good collab, especially with our northern neighbors, good old Canada. And I know I said that weird. I just saying it like that. So yeah, so that's cool. Another cool thing that I thought was worth mentioning is that the NASA Artemis Twitter profile boasts some pretty cool things. I'll just read it straight up to you. It says, quote, "With Artemis, NASA will land the first woman and person of color on the moon. Take the next giant leap with us," end quote. So that's really cool. Props to that. I mean, I don't know why it's taken so long for that to even happen. I mean, we are in 2024, like anyways, but yeah, so like they're getting both knocked out in the same mission. That's pretty cool. You know, hey, as long as we can make some strides and make them together and make some kind of progress, I am here for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, NASA's got kind of a bad rap within the UAP community.
Yeah.
You know, but
to say the friggin' least.
Yeah.
Never a straight answer.
No. I wish they would be more.
Yeah, as
forthcoming.
he's wearing his NASA shirt.
You know,
I got jokes today.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, NASA does do good for humanity, I believe. You know, with all the science telescopes and James Webb. You know, I think. I'll be honest. I think the James Webb Space Telescope has already detected signs of biological life, you know, on another planet, and we're just waiting for the confirmation.
I think we've been doing a lot of cool things with some telescopes. We got the James Webb Space Telescope, we got the Hubble, we got the Euclid that Dr. Becky was talking about last week. So there are a lot of cool space picks coming around these days. Yeah.
You know, I'm excited for the future.
Same.
This spacecraft that tipped over on its side, you know, it's okay. So what? You know, I mean, it almost worked, right? And they're still getting some data out of it.
It's there. It's getting data, sure.
But the whole purpose for this spacecraft was to collect more data so they could apply it for the Artemis missions. You know, and you know that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. So.
So keep in mind, guys, I do have a little tinfoil hat hanging on my little hook over here that I do put on from time to time. So hear me out with this stuff. I have a couple questions and things that arise in my mind. You know, they're talking about being on a certain part of the moon. Well, what about the dark side of the moon? Shout out Pink Floyd. What's going on over there? You know what I mean?
It's not actually dark.
Oh, so now you got jokes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Another thing that comes to mind is that, you know, I have read a lot about the SSP. If you don't know what that means, stands for Secret Space Program. That's an entire rabbit hole that you could dive down into if you want to. I've been there, done that. We can't do it on this show just because we try to stick to more factual things here. And that's kind of more, I'm not saying it's not factual, but I don't know what I'm saying at this point. Let me get back on the point. The point I'm trying to make is that people are saying we already have colonies established on the moon, on Mars. We've already got these, you know, like agreements made with these different races of aliens. It's like a whole Star Trek, Star Wars situation already going on up there. So my mind goes to that, you know, but we could deal with what we got right now, you know? I mean, this is the narrative we're all living through, so I just recommend that if you do want to go down into the SSP rabbit hole, check out this book. This is written by Tony Rodriguez, Project Star Maker. This is the sequel to his first book, the what was it called again? The series Colony Cavalier, which goes into the secret space program and his personal interactions with all of that, his situation. So if you do want to dive into that rabbit hole, I suggest you check that out.
And that concludes this week's UAP Society's UAP UFO News Show. Thanks so much for being here and hanging out with us. And while you're here, do us a favor and smash that like button. Click subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave us a lovely comment down below, and share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the good word.
Let's raise the collective consciousness together in unity. All right, baby. Much love,
peace,
and namaste.
Will you kiss me, just so I know it's real?